and welcome to another episode of the podcast. My name is Mel and I live on the Orkney Islands off the north coast of Scotland with my husband John and our two kitty cats Willow and Holly and a menagerie of chickens and ducks. This is a fibre crafting podcast which is most of the time knitting based, and indeed it is today. And yeah, so if you are new here then welcome, and if you are a returning viewer then welcome back. It has been a few weeks because we have been doing Vlogtober, the royal we. I have been doing Vlogtober and putting out daily videos through the month of October. So if you've been watching that, you will have seen one or two of these projects that I'm going to show today. But I have made some progress since I last recorded. It is now the 5th of November, so it has been a few days since we finished Vlogtober. So I have one finished object and I have one, well, this is a new cast on since I last recorded a podcast episode, but I also have two other new cast-ons and progress on one other project, and I do actually have acquisitions for this episode, which I don't often do, but I have this time. So let's start with new cast on and finished object, which is the sweater that I'm wearing. I will stand up and show it in a moment, but it is a Halloween sweater and I cast this on during October, and it is the Let's Boogie sweater by Katie Franceschi. I believe that's how it's pronounced, but I couldn't swear to it because the name isn't on the pattern. It just says Yarn Love, but on her Ravelry it is Katie Franceschi. So I will I will stand up even and show the sweater off properly. So as you can see, it is a round yoke sweater and it has these little ghosties as the main design, and it also has candy corn around here too, and some other little, just some simple little designs around the yoke. It also has candy corn on the ends of the cuffs, and at the bottom I've just done some simple colour work, which you can't see very well unless I hold it really close up, but I have some ziggity zaggities transitioning from the main colour back to the orange. I have a little bit of striping with my hand spun yarn, which I'll talk about in a moment, some more of the orange, a little bit more of the zigzags, chevrons, and into the very messy sloppy rib. So I'm going to not look at that because that bit hasn't been blocked. So yes, we have some simple colour work and then some fancier stuff going on as well. I have done it at a hip length, which at the moment I'm wearing my t-shirt and sweatpants, so we're just going to ignore that because it's quite chilly today. So it comes to hip length. As you can see, I have done a little bit of waist shaping, but we'll come back to that because I made a mess of it. And I've done full length sleeves, bit of a balloon type sleeve here with it just coming in a little bit at the cuffs, and I will sit down to talk more about it. So yes, if you have watched the Vlogtober videos, you will know that I had a bit of a time making this. Oh, we're a little bit square. Let's just square you up a little bit. So, a few things. The waist shaping. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get it. It didn't like the way it looked when it was, before it was blocked. And then I realised one evening I had done my waist shaping the opposite direction. Back to front, inside out, kind of. So, where a sweater, if you're doing waist shaping, kind of, it would come in at the waist and out at the hips. Instead of doing decreases and increases, I had done increases and decreases. There's not a lot of waist shaping there. I only did like 2 sets of each. But if you kind of hold the sweater flat, it's kind of got these little weird sticky out bits. It's not really noticeable. And you certainly wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. And I'm considering ripping out the sweater to that point and re-knitting it because I've knit it isn't knit top down at a later point, and I have another year to go before until Halloween comes again. So there is chance I might. I'll see how I feel. So that was one of the main issues. Another issue is I was limited on the amount of yarn that I had. So the yarns, I haven't brought the yarns with me, but I can tell you all about them anyway. So I've just lowered you down a little bit so you can see a bit better. So the orange that's on the cuffs and is in the background of the ghosties and all this. This orange and the main yarn are some of my own hand-dyed yarns from when I was a yarn dyer. So the orange is in rock salt and the main colour is pumpkin picking. And I had only 2 skeins of this and I only had 1 skein of the orange. The other colour that I've used for the candy corn in the cuffs and in there and these stripy sections here is some of my own hand spun yarn, and I thought, I don't know if I brought it with me through from the living room. Oh, I have. I didn't think I had, but I do. So with some of this hand spun yarn, if it'll focus, and this one was spun with some hand dyed fibre that I dyed with the orange is with madder and the yellow is done with daffodil flower. And this was some of my early natural dyeing, and way back when I was still dyeing fibre to then spin to then sell, when I didn't realise how much work that entailed. So I have a skein of this and it is self-stripe, well it's self-striping in kind of short lengths. And I have the purple that I've used in the yoke, which looks almost black, but it isn't. It's very dark purple. Is also some of my hand dyed yarn. This is, again, if it'll focus, this is 100% non-superwash Blueface Leicester. Hello, focus. There we go, in these various shades of deep dark purple, and this is dyed with logwood. This is on a merino fibre. This is non-superwash BFL. And then the orange, which I have very little left of, I have that much left of, is on Blueface Leicester nylon. And the pumpkin picking, which I have even less of, I think I used up pretty much every inch of it, is on a merino nylon base. So I had limited yarn, so I knew I wasn't going to get a big sweater, which is why it's just hitting hip length. I've worn this over a dress and it looks really nice over a dress. It's a really nice, usually like a more cropped length over a dress, but it still worked really well. So yeah, I was limited on size. The cuffs, I was undecided about the colour work. I ended up doing colour work on those as well, and when I came to the end I didn't know if I wanted rib or not, so I knit the rib on one sleeve and I didn't like it. So the second sleeve I ummed and ahed on what to do differently, and I decided to try an I-cord bind off because at the time I was wearing my bubble cardigan a lot. I'm still wearing my bubble cardigan a lot. I live in that thing. And it is all I-cord bind off. And I really like the look of it. So I tried it on one sleeve and I liked it. So I ripped out the first sleeve and did a I-cord bind off. The collar originally had ribbing. Because I love the cuff so much, I decided to rip out the collar, even though it was top down, and did an I-cord bind off on that. The I-cord on the collar hasn't been blocked, so it's a bit it needs tidying up really, and the rib hasn't been blocked. I kind of blocked this sweater as I went because the way the colourwork yoke sat when I had finished it, I wasn't sure on the fit, but once it had been blocked it fit really nicely. So when it came to do this is a lot of talking about this garment, I do apologise. It was kind of an epic. The candy corn, I decided I wanted the candy corn to look striped. I didn't want my yarn, which I've put back over here, to kind of go, you know, doing one colour and then when it came to do the second colour it ended up being the same colour and so on. I wanted them to be separate like candy corns, even if they weren't in the correct order. I wanted all 3 colours. So I have a lot of ends that I had to weave in for this section and for the cuffs. just so that I would get that, you know, candy corn look proper to it. We don't actually have candy corn in the UK. I'm sure you can get it now because Americanization of Halloween in the UK. It didn't used to be like what Halloween is in America. Halloween when I was a kid was completely different. It's very much more like it is over there now. But we don't have candy corn. I think you have to import it unless you're really lucky. So I have no idea what it tastes like, or I have tried it. When I was a kid, you see, Halloween, for a start, we didn't have pumpkins in the UK. I mean, I'm sure you could probably pick one up from somewhere. I'm sure you could grow your own as well. You were lucky if you could get a butternut squash. I didn't have butternut squash until I was an adult, put it that way. But what we used to do was carve turnips. And turnips is a subjective word, because what we used to call turnips when I was a kid is when I moved to Derbyshire, because I come from the north of England, and Derbyshire's in the middle of England, and down in Derbyshire they call what we used to call turnips Swedes, which is kind of the regular term in England for what we used to call turnips. But in America you call it rutabaga, I think. But it's the ones that are orange flesh, you know, that they're kind of a purpley kind of a skin, and they have orange flesh inside. But from the north, in the north of England and in Scotland as well, to a certain degree, they're called turnips. But anyway, I digress. We used to carve them, and let me tell you, carving a turnip is hard work, and you have to be very careful. And we put a little candle in and put little holes in the sides below where the cut off lid was, and put a string on it and carry it around with a candle when we were kids. And used to, like, we had a Halloween party at our youth club type thing when I was about 7, and we walked all the way around the field, like the play field, with our turnips, with our candles in, and not tea lights, candles, and to frighten away the evil spirits, because I used to live in a tiny little village in the country at the time. So Halloween was very different. And when I got to sort of 10 or 11, we moved to a different place, and then trick-or-treating started. But trick-or-treating in England, or certainly where I'm from, is completely different to trick-or-treating in America, or it was back then. So you go out and you like dress up, you know, bin bag witch costume type thing, and you knock on doors and trick-or-treat, and what you would get was money. You used to get like the coppers, and then when we finished all trick-or-treating, we'd have a collective kitty, and then we'd share it out all amongst ourselves. Then you go buy sweeties. And then I remember there was one girl came to our school, and she was American, and we all thought it was very strange. She had this like rhyme, it was like trick or treat, smell my feet, which I have heard on a film since then, and we all thought she was a bit strange. And found out that you get sweets in America, which we didn't do here. We do now, but we never did. You didn't get food from strangers. I mean, stranger danger and all that, you didn't do that back then. But you know, money from strangers' doors apparently was perfectly fine. But sweeties, I mean, you know. So anyway, I completely digressed there, but what I was trying to say is candy corn, not a clue, but I wanted it to look like candy corn, so that's what I did. So I did that. The ghosties, the little eyes, they are duplicate stitched on, and I just used a semi-solid black, a little bit of semi-solid black for the eyes. Some of them on the design, I don't know if I have a picture here. I might be able to show this without showing the design. But on the original design, every other ghost has little blushing cheeks. I don't know if you can see that one. It's got like little blushing cheeks, and that one doesn't, and then that one does. And I did look for some yarn to do that, and I found some that would work, but I decided when I kind of little bunched it up and held it, I decided not to, and I just went with the little eyes and nose on the ghosts. So that is my Let's Boogie sweater. I'm really happy with it other than the waist shaping. I did just adapt sometimes with the colourwork chart to work with my yarn, because I wanted some of the hand spun to show the colour, like I've had to adjust the chart slightly to use my colours. So like my hand spun doesn't contrast very well with the orange, and same with my pumpkin picking doesn't really contrast very well with the hand spun either. So I've adapted the yolk ever so slightly in places, but there isn't a huge amount of difference. And I've added some extra striping of my hand spun so you can see the colours of that, and it kind of ties it all in together. Like I've added extra striping at the bottom of the yoke here as well before moving on to blending into the main body of the garment. So I'm really happy with it. The pattern is a decent pattern. So I can recommend it. It's a little more on the expensive side in comparison to some of the other knitting patterns. I think it was about £9 compared to say £6 or £7 for most garment patterns. But other than that, and you know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a note to make. But I really like the pattern. I really like the design, and I was feeling that I've been doing a lot of basic garment and sock knitting recently, and I do enjoy knitting fun seasonal items. So Halloween garment, I have a real weakness for a good Halloween design. I found a really nice Halloween cowl design this year, which I may do next year if I have enough knitting time to do it. But it'll be almost irresistible to do something fun knitting wise for Halloween, so I'm pretty sure it will get done. And it's the same with Christmas knitting. I like those fun seasonal knits. It brings a fun element to the craft rather than just plain old garment knitting all the time, because I would say I'm a project knitter rather than a process knitter. Although I use the process to keep my hands busy whilst, say, watching TV, it's not, I like the item at the end, and once I get partway through a project, I'm itching for it to be finished and to have the item to be able to be used. I'm not knitting it for the process of just the feel of the yarn running through my hands, if that makes sense. So that is item number 1 for this episode. I will try to keep the the other ones, the time length down a wee bit, because that one took a little bit long. Okay, item number 2 is a new cast on since I last recorded a podcast, and it was another autumn Halloween cast on, and it is a shawl, because I sometimes just get the urge to knit a shawl even though I hardly ever have the opportunity to wear one. So this is the first part, as far as I've got, with a new shawl cast on called the Phobia shawl, and it is a triangle shawl, and I've slightly adapted it in the fact that I am adding extra increases in it, so it will be more of a crescent shape to give me extra wingspan without making the depth so unmanageable, and also and yarn management, because I am limited on the amount of yarn that I have to use for this, so it's not sitting very well on the cable. But the first part, as you can see, has these stockinette bands interspersed with these garter bands, and I'm using 2 shades of charcoal for this shawl. The shawl itself, like I said, is the Phobia shawl, and it was a pattern released by Lily of Nordic Stitches a few years ago, which is when I bought the pattern, and it has some more detailed texture band panels here, which are not showing up on the black and white photo, and it also has some lace panels interspersing them as well. Lily has started re-releasing her patterns under her name of Lily Skog, so maybe she will re-release this one at some point, but unfortunately it's not available at the moment. I've had this pattern for a while, like I said, and I've had the yarn for it for a couple of years. Was it a couple of years, or did I buy this year? Last year? Maybe I bought this yarn last year actually, but I got it from the Scottish Yarn Festival, formerly the Perth Yarn Festival, and I have 3 cakes of this yarn. They're all 50-gram cakes of yarn, and I have 2 of this slightly lighter charcoal and 1 of the darker, which you can kind of see better if I put them sideways like that. And this is a very special yarn, which I don't know if you can get this even anymore. Well, you used to be able to, but when I looked on the website, I couldn't find this yarn. But it is by the Border Mill, and it is the Alpaca Rose 4-ply. And I first came across this at the Edinburgh Yarn Festival a few years back, and I loved it, but I couldn't justify getting it at the time, and I didn't know what to buy or how much to buy or what to buy it for. But when I went to Perth, I had certain yarns in mind. Well, I knew they were going to be there and I would like to get some yarn from them, and I had certain projects in mind. I wanted to buy sweater quantities, a fingering weight, and if I wanted to buy a couple of random skeins, they had to be so that they could coordinate to make shawls. So I bought 150 grams, 350 gram skeins of this, and it is 50% alpaca, 50% rose fibre, which gives this lovely flecked and super shine effect. You can just see the light shining on it. It's really, really lovely, and it is very, very soft because the alpaca is very, very soft. And plant fibres like rose and tencel tend to be quite shiny and quite soft too. So the colourway is onyx on one of them, and the other colour is AR2222, which I think is just a batch number. So like I said, I'm following the pattern, but the only difference is I am adding at the beginning and end of every other row, I'm adding a yarn over in between the kind of border stitches, which is the top edge stitches, and the beginning of the pattern. So where the stitch marker is in for where the normal increases are, I'm just adding in that extra yarn over on the same row as I'm doing the increases that are mentioned in the pattern. And that'll give me a crescent shawl, but it will be triangle at the bottom. And I think I've seen it referred to as a heart-shaped shawl. Doesn't really look like a heart to me. It kind of looks like a boomerang to me, but at the same time it's not a boomerang shawl, because a boomerang shawl is something else completely different, but it's boomerang shaped. So I'm really loving knitting on it, but because it is quite dark and it's fingering weight, I'm finding this is my daytime knitting. If I'm watching like knitting podcasts or something, usually I do when John's at work in the afternoons, I'll sit down and watch a knitting podcast or two, and I will work on this then when I have enough daylight left. Although it's getting quite late in the year now, so I don't know how much daylight I will have left in the afternoon. So that is my latest cast on. I have two more items. First one I'm going to whiz through relatively quickly because it's now been put to be frogged and reknit basically. So I have this book, Fair Isle Style by Mary Jane Mucklestone. It has designs by other designers in it, and I've always loved this pattern, which is the Mushroom Kelly Muffs, as you can see here, by Spilly Jane, aka Jane Dupois. I love these. I absolutely love them. So I cast these on, and basically I cast them on with too small a needle size. I'm just checking to make sure this is recording because my battery symbol has gone off. But we shall see how we go. Hopefully we're okay. So I cast these on and I knit, you know, 3 inches on the main part of the wristies, and they are too small, unfortunately. The design, I think, uses a 3mm needle. Let's see. It uses a 2.75, and these are actually 2.75. So I wasn't sure what size to use. I have another pair of wristies that are on hold, and I'm knitting those on a 2.5mm needle with the same yarns, but they have a larger stitch count for the circumference. I was hoping a 2.75, the next size up, would be enough, but I mean I can get them on, but I think once I get up to here on the palm, they're going to be a little bit snug, and I don't want them to be snug. I want them to be relaxed. I don't want them loose, but I want them to be relaxed. And I think if I move those up, I know I'm going to be putting a thumb hole in, but we're going to be getting to the point where it's stretching out the pattern a bit. So I'm pretty sure what I'm going to have to do is rip these out and go up to a 3mm needle. And maybe compare the stitch count, or my gauge basically. I'll check my gauge and compare that to previous wristies that I've made in the past, because these are just, they're just a little bit too snug for me to be happy with them. And it's stretching them out is just distorting the pattern. And I'm considering swapping out the kind of mid beige that I have here for another colour, because you can't see it very well. You can see the off-white with the mushrooms, but this is just a little bit not high enough contrast. I might put something like a gold colour there or something like that, but we'll see. The yarns I'm using are all Drops Flora. I have a red, I have a light beige, I have a light cool brown, and I have the green that they do. I also have, I think this is Drops Flora. This is the, yes, it's not the natural white. This one is like a, it's a cool, slightly, like if you could take a beige and wash it out as much as you could possibly wash it out till it's white, this is what you would get. It's not a creamy white like an undyed yarn, and it's not a white like a bright vivid white, and it's not the normal white either. It's definitely not, because there is a white in the Drops Flora and this is not it. So I'm using that as well. But like I said, I think I'm going to swap out the light beige for something different and start again. But because I'm in no hurry for them, it's just kind of going in the to be frogged and worked on at some point down the line pile. So that is the Kelly Muff mittens, which I've been wanting it for so long, but that's just one of those things. Okay, final piece of knitting before I briefly touch on my naughty acquisitions. Well, they're not naughty, but unintended acquisitions. It is a garment which I had started on the last episode. I'm just trying to untangle all my ends because I am alternating skeins, and it is my adapted Salem sweater, which I absolutely am loving, and I cannot wait to wear this. This is just a basic raglan sweater that I have taken all the stitch count for from the Salem sweater by Dragonhold Yarns, which I'll show in a moment, but I've also added some garter stitches down either side of the raglan just to add a little bit of interest to, and yeah, really happy with it. There was only at one point that I had to rip out, after I'd separated for the sleeves, the colours were pooling a little bit too close together, and I was getting some quite large pale patches and quite large dark patches. I will kind of show you where I changed. There was, you can see here and here, but I'd knit another couple of inches past that and it was pretty noticeable. So I ripped back, I cut one of my yarns and I moved it over slightly, like half a skein, and re-knit it. I also I've actually faded in 4 skeins in this. I started out with 2 skeins at the top, and I introduced 2 more skeins sort of close to separating for the body, which have worked out really well. You definitely can't see in real life, you can't tell at all, and unless I pointed it out you wouldn't know. I've used both of the skeins that I used at the top at the same time, so at some point there's been like 3 skeins for a few inches, and then I switched to the other one that I was using at the top and 3 skeins there, and I've just took that out, so there's now only just the 2 skeins because I'm getting close to stopping and working on the sleeves. I like to get to a minimum length on a garment and then stop, pause, do the sleeves, and then it says how much yarn I have left. I have 4 skeins for this, so I have plenty. It's slightly oversized without being like a complete huge poncho, so I have a few inches of positive ease. When I cast on the neckline, I did a garter neckline, and I'm not sure if I'm happy with it. It might get pulled out yet. It does look nice on. It kind of rolls. It rolls backwards and stuff when it's held, but when you're actually wearing it, it actually sits okay. You've just got a bit of rolling, which is what I wanted, but I might change it. I haven't decided yet. The sleeves I'm planning to make full length, and I'm getting to almost to the point where I'm going to knit those. I'm at the point where I really just want this finished now because I want to move on to other things. The yarn that I've used is 4 skeins I have in my stash left over from my hand dyeing days, if it will focus, and it is 4 skeins of this colourway, which is Autumn Leaves, and it is on a Blueface Leicester nylon base, and I really love this colourway. It's kind of autumnal without being completely in your face, so you could wear this all year round really. It's more golden, less orange in real life, if that makes sense. I mean, it's got orange in it, but the kind of the golden tones kind of stand out more than they do on the camera. Just excuse me a moment, I have a cat trying to get in the door. Come on then. We have a willow cat has joined us now. So I don't think there's an awful lot to say about this garment. It is based upon the stitch count and so on for the Salem sweater by Tristan of Dragon Horde Yarns or Dragon Horde Designs. I have knit this sweater before in a sparkly burgundy yarns, and it has cabling and bobbles down the sleeve. I've obviously not done that, but I have just used the overall shape and what have you to make this. It is supposed to be a dolman shape. I think I've probably knit it with 2 little e's to really show that dolman shape, which is fine because I'm not really big on having huge big underarm shapes, although it would have looked nice. And I should have probably knit this a size bigger. It fits perfectly fine, it is oversized, but originally I wanted quite an oversized sweater, so I possibly should have done it another size bigger. But I'm not used to knitting sweaters with large quantities of positive ease. I usually like around 4 inches of positive ease on a regular garments, so I'm not used to knitting ones which would have like 10 inches of positive ease. And I think once your body's above a certain size, I think you don't need as much positive ease to get the same look as you would get on a smaller frame, if that makes sense. So on a small frame you can have like 10, 12, 14 inches of positive ease and it'll hang down, but when you're more curvy or larger, then it doesn't hang the same way, and I don't think you need quite as much positive ease as you do on a smaller frame. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself very well, but I found if I was to give myself a garment with 12 inches positive ease, it would just hang really strange. But if I give myself, say, 6 inches of positive ease, it will hang more like the designer originally intended it to look. So that is what I call my Mad King's Raceway sweater, which is a reference to my computer game Guild Wars 2, but unless you actually play that you won't get the reference, but it is from a scene during the Halloween event on my game. So that is my kind of autumn Halloween sweater, getting there and almost done. So that is all of the knitting projects, and that just brings me on to some acquisitions that I got a couple of weeks ago. I hadn't really planned on, but I'm going to show you. Okay, so I found the pattern. So I'm planning on knitting a Christmas sweater, I'm planning on knitting the Boreal sweater by Kate Davies, which has got this quite bold colourwork design all over it. And I have the yarn that I need to make it, or I think I have just enough yarn to make it, which is going to be in like a red and an off-white colour scheme. But when I was looking through other people's projects, I saw an absolutely beautiful one made of a rich navy blue and crisp white colour scheme, and I loved it. And then I decided I wanted to make 2 Boreal garments. So I'm making my red and white Boreal for Christmas, and I would like it ready for to wear at Christmas. But I would also like to make a second one as a winter garment, so there's no pressure on to get it done for Christmas. So apologies if I'm going to rustle poly bags here. I have a sweater quantity of Aran weight yarn, which is what it calls for, that originally I bought for a cardigan that I've decided not to make. So I had this yarn and I wasn't sure what I was going to use it for, and then this came along. So I have got a sweater's quantity of the Drops Nepal, if it will focus, in this lovely rich blue, which the light has changed in here now because the sun has moved around to the other window and is going to look really strange, but it is quite blue. Let me just move the camera slightly. Okay, I've moved the camera slightly, so I'm hoping the light is going to be better. I have 2 windows in here. I have one there and one there, and the sun has moved far enough round that it's shining through that one. So the blue, as you can see, is a really nice, rich, it's somewhere between a royal blue and a navy, but it's really, really nice, in colourway 1709. And I have a little bit of Drops Nepal white, crisp white, 0001 left over from making another garment earlier in the year, but I do not have enough to knit the Boreal sweater. So I thought, well, I could just order, I already have this, if I order enough white to make the garment, I can kind of justify that, because I probably won't get around to knitting it until next year. See, at the beginning of this year I decided to have a yarn diet. I wasn't going to buy any more yarn this year, unless I had good cause, like I needed to finish a project. Technically, this comes, you know. So I ordered a whole bunch of the Drops Nepal. I ordered 6 skeins, 300 grams worth, which should be plenty to knit the top part, the bottom half of this winter Boreal sweater. So of course then I had to make up to, you know, like free shipping, because why pay £5 for shipping when I could buy more yarn for that same £5? You know, there is method to my madness. So what I ordered was, I ordered some sock yarn, I ordered some Christmas sock yarn, I ordered this, and I ordered this to go together. They are both West Yorkshire spinners. This one here is one of their Christmas colourways. It is vintage tinsel, and it is on a stellina base, so it sparkles. And this one is blueberry bonbon for the contrast toes and heels, because together they look to me like the tin of Christmas Roses chocolates. I don't know if you have Christmas Roses chocolates in America, but if you don't, you're missing out. Well, no. 10 years ago you're missing out. They're not the same as they used to be. They don't taste the same. Half of them don't have proper dairy milk chocolate in them, and it's just not right. And the tin, like the tins are plastic instead of tin, and the wrappers that the chocolates come in are like these little sealed cellophane things instead of proper, you know, sweetie twist packets that they used to be. So it's kind of lost that nostalgic feel. But these together look like a tin of Cadbury's chocolate roses. So that's what I plan to do. I'm going to make a pair of Christmas socks, and maybe make my husband a pair of Christmas socks. We shall see. But I do like the West Yorkshire Spinners sock yarn. It has 35% Blueface Leicester in it, and I love the woolly feel. It's slightly softer than, say, Regia. I really love a Regia sock yarn. If I could only choose one sock yarn, it would be Regia. I like the hardiness of it, but I really like the West Yorkshire spinners. So I bought those, and it still wasn't quite up to free shipping. So then I bought 2 skeins of the Drops Fable. These are 50-gram balls, and I bought a contrast for toes and heels for both of them in Drops Fable in the colourway beige. So I will use this one, which is, I believe, called Wooden Rose, which is these lovely shades of cool pink, cool dusky pinks and cool brown colours, and then contrast toes and heels with the beige. And this one, which I believe is called Forest Long Print, and it is cool greens and tans, and again with the beige as contrast toes and heels. Two pairs of socks from 3 balls of yarn. And I have a cat chewing my knitting patterns. Look, madam, say hello. This is Willow, instead of chewing my knitting patterns like a little madam. She's a monkey. She doesn't like being picked up much either. So that is my acquisitions. I don't intend to have any more before Christmas, before the rest of the year. These were unplanned, but they have purpose, if you know. Well, there may be the sock yarn stuff, but I'm always knitting socks. I've always got a pair on the go. I have my autumn ones that need finishing before I can cast on these. Although now that Halloween's done, don't get me wrong, I'm not putting up my Christmas decorations yet, but I am kind of itching to start my kind of Christmas planning and prepping. My Christmas cake is made. I made that during Vlogtober, and I do that every October, except last year when I was a bit late. But casting on a pair of Christmas socks I'm happy to do, because then I can wear them all through December if I get them finished. And kind of planning what we're doing over the holiday period I'm happy to do in November as well, because it's not really doing it, is it? So I think that's it for this episode. So I'm going to sign off there, because this one's going to be quite a long one, unfortunately, but maybe that's a good thing. And I shall see you during the mini Christmas garment knitting vlog that I'm currently doing. It will be a 2, maybe 3-parter, and I'm going to do a vlog of me making my Christmas sweater, because I like doing that. So I shall see you on the next episode, or in the vlog, hopefully. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye bye.